Share via email. Report story. By Impeccable. Chapter 1. Let's see. Never have I ever swallowed a bug. Ha. Only one to go and I win. Ew. Zero. That's disgusting. It was by accident, Ashido. But it doesn't matter because I'm going to win. GCH. I doubt it. Look, I have 3 fingers. Who knows? The next 3 things might just involve me. That's impossible and you know it, Juro. It could happen. And it totally will. I can feel it. How exactly can you feel you're going to win? Women's intuition. Are you serious? Yes, of course I am. There's no use arguing about it, it's just a game. Who wins will win. Oh, shut up, Todoroki. Izuku laughed quietly from behind the counter, waiting for the mixer to finish stirring his cookie dough. His classmates really did put their all into everything they did. They weren't even playing to win anything, it was just something to pass the time before they all felt like they were going to pass out. Our friends are pretty lively tonight, don't you think, Deku-kun? Ochako smiled up at Izuku, clasping her hands behind her back and leaning in close again. Izuku flushed and nodded, leaning back a bit. Why yeah, they are. My turn then. Never have I ever cross-dressed. Quote dot 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 quote dot. No fucking way. Tilda. My younger sibling needed a fourth person for her game and I was the only one available. Her other friends were gone on vacation and I offered. I looked absolutely fabulous. Actually, I'm not that surprised. Yeah, it's very like Aoyama. Someone wash my eyes, I can't get the image out of my head. Spare me, you're just jealous because I can rock female clothing better than you. Is that a fucking challenge? Bakugo, please. It's no use, Hiroshima, he's too far gone now. Are you saying that you'd totally be up for dressing like a girl? If it means beating this fucker then yes. OMG, Toru, go get your stuff. On it, Mina-kun. Izuku's head slammed on the counter in front of him, causing everyone to look in his and Ochako's direction. He was shaking with the effort of keeping his laughter in. Ah, Deku-kun. Are you all right? Ochako exclaimed and put a hand on Izuku's back. He nodded, a hand over his mouth. I guess he just can't handle the idea of Bakugo in girls' clothing. To be fair, it is a funny mental image, Hiroshima. The fuck you mean? Yeah, but that begs the question. What would he look better in? He seems like he'd look better in skinny jeans and a cute blouse. I agree, Yao Momo. Gotta show off that butt. Promoted stories. You'll also like. Her prince from the underworld, half demon is. 0.25.3K 445. It's basically the same story as my succubus Momo X Deku story. I know, real original, but hey, now you guys get a Deku from the other side of the tracks. Ohm Fluke a day 111K 8.2 kiloamperes. Collection of short Ohm Fluke over 365 days. Please check the second book for the rest of the day's update. Izuku's Harem Academia 181K 1.7 Qst. Read. I am. Sequel of. You are check mark 69.4K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of. You are, so better read that first before going here. Tears of joy, tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Zero Deku Onishots 31.1K 790. Because of circumstances, this book won't be continued, unfortunately. Feel free to check out my other stuff. Thank you for understanding. Return of Mokuden discontinued 3.5K 45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. Convicted Hearts 3100 like my other story but ILI longer. Yeah, I can't picture Bakugo in a dress or skirt. Legs are too muscular for that. What the fuck I can totally do a dress. I think it really depends on the type of dress. Like, he could probably rock one of those flowier dresses and skirts. Ah, yeah, that makes sense, Kyoka. I can't see him wearing bright colors though. Black and red are probably better. I'm back, Tilda. Ooh, great. Izuku slipped and fell on the ground, holding his stomach as he laughed. Ochako fussed over the fact that Izuku had just fallen and possibly hurt himself, but he just laughed and laughed and laughed. The fuck you laughin' at, Deku? Wow, I don't think I've ever heard Midoriya laugh that much. I don't think I've heard Midoriya laugh at all. I'll fucking kill you. It's quite refreshing to say the least. God, even his laugh is like the sun. How in the world is this even possible? Obviously he's some kinda angel sent down to earth to try and right all the wrongs of this world. Some kind of sun child that's here to show us all the true meaning of love and companionship. Okay, we're getting too sappy now. Let him laugh, Bakugo-kun. He's never been this happy. Get the fuck out of my way, gravity bitch. Oh, yeah, I forgot Bakugo sorta hates Midoriya for some weird reason. Should we help? Probably. Bakugo-kun, it is prohibited to use your quirk against other students out of class. Fuck off, glasses. So loud. I can't breathe. Bakugo-kun, don't you have a heart? Listen to Deku-kun's beautiful laugh. The fuck would I care about Deku's laugh? Yeah, we should probably stop them. It took a few minutes for everyone to settle down. Izuku finally stopped laughing and got up from the floor. He then realized what everyone had said about his laughter and practically blew a fuse. While Tenya and Ochako tried to calm Izuku down, the rest of the class went back to their game. It went on for another 10 minutes. Kyoka did end up winning, surprisingly, until Mina leaned her head back and groaned. Ugh, this is starting to get boring. You're just upset because you have no chance of getting in the top 10. Nah, seriously, I thought this would be more fun. I thought we would get to learn a bunch of things about each other, but I only found out stuff I could have gone my whole life without knowing. She glanced pointedly at Yuga. She has a point. Well, fine then, Ashido. What do you suggest? Izuku, now calm, saw an evil glint appeared in Mina's eye and feared for all of their lives. I know exactly what we should play, Kaminari. She stood up quickly and pointed to a broom closet nearby. We should play 7 Minutes in Heaven. Well, that gained everyone's attention. 7 Minutes in Heaven. Yup. Come on. It'll be fun, guys. Yeah, I agree. Well, of course you would, Mineta. What can I say? I'm a man of opportunity. So loud. Yua. 7 Minutes in Heaven. Ochako held a fist up to her mouth, her eyes uncertain. I've never played, have you two? She looked over at Tenya and Izuku. Izuku shook his head. And no, of course not. Tenya crossed his arms over his chest and closed his eyes. Neither have I. This game is not appropriate for students our age, especially aspiring young heroes. Ah, come on, Iida. Lighten up a bit. Let loose. Mina called from the lounge area. It'll be fun. Exciting. A way to get to know each other on a personal level. A personal level, you say? Iida lightly touched his chin in thought. A way to build even stronger bonds between each other, to gain more trust, and truly understand each other. Brilliant. What? Alright. I, as class representative, will allow you all to play this game. What? Mina, Toru, and Minoru cheered while the rest looked absolutely dumbfounded. Iida-kun. Izuku thought, gaping. You just played into her hands. Right, we need a bottle. Yao Momo, could you please? Mina clapped her hands together, smiling. After a moment, Momo let her bewilderment fall and did as Mina asked, sighing. Fine, fine, I guess it wouldn't hurt to play. She handed Mina the glass bottle. Yay. Mina jumped up and placed the bottle down on its side on the table. She turned to the three still in the kitchen area. Come on, you three. Let's play. Izuku tensed. Ah, I mean cookies. He stuttered and gestured vaguely to the bowl of cookie dough. Fine, but finish up and join us. Ochako, Iida, you two can come though, can't you? Izuku returned to his baking as Ochako and Tenya made their way over. Is it really okay to be playing this game? Couldn't this end up ruining our friendships depending on what happens? Ah, I really don't think this is a good idea. He shook his head and finished placing the small circles of dough on the cookie sheet. He slid it into the oven as his classmates figured out the first two players. I'll go first since it was my idea, Mina said and spun the bottle. It spun for a minute before slowly stopping. Izuku looked back and saw everyone leaning toward it. Aoyama. Huh. Mina jumped up. Well, okay. Someone time us. She grabbed Yuga's wrist and dragged him into the broom closet. Wow, it's kinda small in here, was the last thing they all heard before the door was closed. Momo held up her phone, showing the countdown. I got it. Ajiro leaned back. Yeah, well now what? There's not a lot of stuff to do while we wait. Nobody really had an answer. Izuku reluctantly came over and sat beside Tenya, murmuring, how can you all be so relaxed about this? Well, you're not entitled to doing anything bad, Denki said, with air quotes around the word. You could just chat the whole time you're in there with someone. It doesn't have to be anything, sexual. And why would you want it to be sexual? Tenya added. Doing something so intimate in a broom closet, unthinkable. Those types of things are meant only for when two people are at the height of their love and wish to show their feelings for one another in a different way. Izuku breathed out a slight laugh, closing his eyes. Well, that's Iida-kun for you. The 7 minutes passed quickly with bits of small talk between the friend groups. Mina and Yuga came out when Momo yelled for them that the 7 minutes were up. Nothing seemed to have happened between the two, nor did either of them say, so it was let go. The game went on for a few rounds with the next couples being Katsuki and Ajiro, Kyoka and Momo, Tsuyu and Fumikage, and lastly Tenya and Toru. In the middle of Katsuki and Ajiro's turn, Izuku's cookies were finished and distributed. By Kyoka and Momo's turn, it had become a part of the game to explain what exactly had happened in the closet. So far, nothing too bad had happened. The worst of it was when it was revealed that Tsuyu had held hands with Fumikage, which was apparently just a way to help Fumikage control Dark Shadow because the closet was particularly dark. Some decided that was just a cover-up and some believed them, but either way, the subject was dropped. All right, who's the next victim? Mina said as she tapped her chin and looked around at her classmates. Midori. Izuku jolted at his name. How about you? Me. Yep. Your turn now. No backing out. But, might as well just do it. Midoriya, no use in arguing with her, Ajiro helpfully encouraged. Izuku gulped and shakily spun the bottle on the table. He closed his eyes, lowered his head, and hoped to God it didn't land on a girl. He could handle being alone in a room with a boy for 7 minutes, but a girl. No, his heart would give out before he could even get in the closet. The sound of glass scraping against wood stopped and there was commentary on whoever it landed on. Commentary being giggling and oohs. Izuku opened one eye, raised his head, then opened the other. His eyes slowly followed the top of the bottle to where it pointed diagonally from him. He felt his heart seize as he trailed his eyes up the person and onto their face. Uraraka-san. Just kill him now. Ochako looked equally perturbed as she was pulled out of her seat since she wasn't giving any indication she was going to get up. Mina pulled her to the door, giggling about how Ochako was going to do great and that she was going to knock him dead. Ochako could literally feel her soul leaving her body. If anyone was going to be knocked dead, it would be her. Mina turned Ochako around to face her, with her back to the open closet. Seriously, Ochako, it'll be fine. Have fun. Mina then pushed her into the room. She stumbled back and almost gained her footing, before tripping on a broom and hitting the farthest wall with her back. She tsked in pain as she heard Izuku protesting from outside. No, really, I'm good. I take it back. I don't really want to play anymore, plus I'm actually sort of tired, so I think I'll just be heading up now. Be a man, Midoriya. If this is what it takes to be a man, then I want a refund. Oh, for the love of no takesies backsies. Mina huffed, put her hands on Izuku's back, and shoved him into the room, slamming the door closed. Izuku stumbled forward, almost gained his footing back, then tripped on the same broom, and surged forward. Izuku wondered at the back of his mind if this had all been planned, down to the part where he had accidentally pinned Ochako up against the wall, caging her in with his hands. He even wondered if they knew his knee would end up between Ochako's legs and that both of them would get so blinded and intoxicated by each other's smells that they would actually stay there for a good minute or two, weak-kneed and dumbstruck. Deku-kun. Ochako's voice was a bit muffled by Izuku's collarbone, but he was close enough to be able to hear even the quietest sound from her. Why yeah, Uraraka-san. Did he sound breathless? He probably did. It wouldn't be impossible, considering he was breathless. Could you, could we what? He glanced down at her and felt his breath catch in his throat when seeing her flushed, embarrassed face pressed into his shirt. She seemed to be trying to hide or something. His heart skipped and picked up speed until he was sure Ochako could feel it all. This was bad. Out of all the other players, why did the bottle have to land on Ochako of all people? He managed to push himself away from her quickly, but he then ended up tripping over that same goddamn broom and thumped his back against the door. Ochako's hand went for him as he did, then fell back to her side. From outside the closet, he heard some of his friends more like backstabbers, ooh, and one said something about the two of them getting feisty. His face burned brighter than it already was, and he would have called out to them that that wasn't what happened if his heart weren't lodged tight in his throat. Izuku felt unusually cold despite his flamed face, and he vaguely wondered if he would warm up again if he went back over to her. Of course he couldn't do that now, unless he give Ochako the wrong idea. Still though, he wondered if he had anything to lose. Ochako also seemed disappointed somehow. She was clutching the same hand she had reached out to him with close to her chest now and looked kind of guilty. Their breathing was the only sound in the room. Izuku knew his was particularly loud because of his rapidly beating heart, and he would have thought that it was the same for Ochako, since hers was equally loud, but that was absurd. Why would she be so nervous right now? She never showed any inclination of being shy ever, and there was only that one time at the mall that she showed any nervousness towards him. Deku-kun. He was jolted out of his thoughts by her shaking voice, and he looked at her. Why yeah, why'd you? She wasn't looking at him. I just. Ochako took a hesitant step forward, then another. You I couldn't. She stepped over the fallen broom and continued making her way over to him, slowly. He pressed himself as far into the door as he could. Couldn't what? She asked. She still wasn't looking at him. Couldn't. See, couldn't. She was a step away now. Yeah. Handle it, he choked out. The closeness. Oh. Ochako continued forward until she was pressed against Izuku's chest, ignoring what he'd just said about her proximity. He sucked in a breath and tensed. She lightly placed a hand over his heart and finally looked up at him, grinning. You're really nervous, huh? Izuku could only nod, eyes locked onto Ochako's. Me too, she said, licking her lips, and suddenly Izuku was looking at them, unable to tear his eyes away. He swallowed thickly and blinked. Was she closer now? He couldn't tell. Is it wrong for me to want to? Izuku's eyes felt heavy, so he closed them. Want to what? He whispered, but he had a strange inkling as to what she meant. It was weird, really. Why would she want to do that sort of thing with him? He was just an awkward ball of nerves who could barely talk to her without stuttering. Just my heart, She bit her lip and felt her eyes closing too. Can I? He was nodding and suddenly they were kissing. One of Izuku's arms latched around her waist and his other hand was on the back of her head. She had an arm around his neck and a hand tangled in his hair, and this time, her leg was between his in a surprising twist. He quickly discovered that neither of them were that great of kissers, but their lack of experience seemed to be overshadowed by their burst of enthusiasm and passion. This caused him to throw caution to the wind, and with a sudden boost of confidence, he dragged his tongue against her lips. She made a noise but complied, and then his tongue was in her mouth and it was touching hers, and oh God. Izuku could hardly form a coherent thought. All that was running through his head had a similar message that could be deciphered as, I'm kissing Uraraka, I'm kissing Uraraka, I'm kissing Uraraka, I'm. It was a strange feeling, really, to realize you were making out with your best friend in a broom closet because of some silly party game. It made his insides feel weightless and he himself a little excited. It was a similar feeling to when he was training during heroics, a fluttering nervousness in his stomach, except the fluttering was more like beating wings and the nervousness was more of a gut-wrenching anxiety. He wondered if it was because they were not 20 feet away from all of their friends, all who probably assumed both of them were just sitting in silence, barely able to even look at each other. He wondered if it was because they weren't a couple, they were just two friends playing a game that somehow turned into something more. He wondered if it was because this could be considered a little bit wrong. Either way, it was exhilarating. Still pressed against the door, Izuku leaned closer, somehow managing to assume command. He heard her whisper his name when he retreated for a bit of air, which caused him to dive right back in despite the need for oxygen. He kept her closely pressed against him and she seemed to be trying to push him back against the door again. Maybe for better comfort, maybe to establish dominance, who knew? Izuku didn't really care for concrete reasoning anymore. All he knew was that he wasn't going down without a fight. Izuku seriously contemplated if he was allowed to drift lower onto her neck or bite her lip. The first would probably be okay now, considering how both he and Ochako were basically drunk on each other, but what about after? Neck kissing wasn't really that bad compared to other things he could do right now if he had the mindset of a villain, but he wasn't sure on Ochako's opinion on these types of things. Would she be mad at him if he did? Would she like it? Would his heart even be able to handle it if she allowed him? He decided the former would put both him and Ochako through cardiac arrest and went with the second on impulse, without even considering the consequences. It was received with a surprised noise and a tighter pull on his hair. He assumed that meant he'd done something right and did it again. By this time, the two had completely lost track of time. Had they been there minutes, hours? Unabashedly, both hoped that they had been forgotten and that their friends had all gone to bed or something. The realization would probably catch up to them later, and they would suddenly turn into red-faced messes and be unable to face anyone for a few hours. But that was just Izuku's hypothesis. From outside, both of them could hear some sort of ringing, like an alarm, but it was too quiet to be one of Yue's emergency bells, so the two teens thought nothing of it. They were too late to remember that Momo had set an alarm to signify the end of their 7 minutes in heaven. A moment later, Izuku was suddenly falling back, and because of his hold on Ochako, he took her with him. Their lips disconnected as they let out a small cry and landed on the floor with Izuku on his back and Ochako above him. Mina looked down at them in surprise, and the rest of the class that had turned to see what the commotion looked similarly stunned. Their eyes drifted from their strange hold on each other to their clouded eyes to their swollen lips. Mina, being the closest one, saw that Ochako had a line of saliva down her chin. It took a few moments to get out of their kiss-dazed haze, but once they did, Izuku and Ochako realized that they'd just been caught making out by all of their friends. In an attempt to fix their situation, the first thing out of both of their mouths was, "It isn't what it looks like." Denki snickered. "So you two weren't just in there sucking face in there?" "And no, we weren't. Honest, we were just what?" They got quiet and everyone laughed, well, everyone except Shoto and Fumikage, but they smiled, so it still counts. "And what's with that strange way you're holding each other? Looks like a hardcore makeout session if I've ever seen one." Immediately the two of them released their hold on each other and Ochako rolled off of Izuku. They stumbled to their feet, both of them figuring out that they were still incredibly weak-kneed after that whole ordeal. Mina placed a hand on Ochako's shoulder. "See, it was fine. Mina-chan, please." Mina giggled. The three of them walked back to the couches where Izuku and Ochako sat on opposite sides of Tenya, both with clenched fists and covered eyes, as Tenya lectured them about how that sort of thing was reserved for people in committed relationships and not for two friends in a cramped broom closet. Izuku had at least 3 people pat him on the back, and the girls said to Ochako that if Izuku had forced it on her or touched her in a way she didn't like, that they would personally see that he got what he deserved. Neither gave more than one-worded responses to these, and the game continued on. "All right, how about Todoroki goes next?" "What?" By the end, everyone had had at least one turn. It was nearing midnight when they all decided to disperse back to their rooms with dazed goodnights and worn-out promises to do the same tomorrow. Most everybody fell asleep immediately upon hitting their pillows, with a few still lingering awake for another half hour. Either way, everyone was out of it, and if Mina happened to hear the elevator opening and closing, well, she would let it go for Ochako's sake. Chapter 2. Ochako stood in front of Deku's door, a fist raised and ready to knock. She was frozen in place, not really sure what she was doing. She hadn't been able to sleep, mostly because she couldn't stop thinking about what happened with Deku, so she decided it would be better to try to, talk to him about it. She didn't really think it through. All she knows is that she couldn't get the idea out of her mind for the 10 extra minutes she spent trying to talk herself out of it. This sort of thing, Ochako had reasoned with herself, shouldn't be left alone. They should talk about it, come to some sort of concrete reason to why it happened, then laugh it off and be done with it. It might be brought up by their classmates in a way of trying to tease them, but then something else amusing would come up and it would be forgotten. Ochako and Deku's accidental make-out session in the broom closet on the first floor of their dormitory would become something of ancient history. Something that would probably never be mentioned again and would be left with all the other high school memories they were all bound to make as the years go by. It could be something they laugh about when they reminisce as adults. With new resolve and a shaky smile, Ochako nodded to herself and quietly knocked on the door. Yeah, everything would work out. It would be forgotten and completely dismissed as raging hormones getting the better of two teenagers. She was probably the only one that was even still thinking about it. She's sure that Deku, while embarrassed, had already brushed it aside and thought nothing of it. Yeah, yeah, of course, it would all be fine. Yeah, the thought of brushing it aside made her smile falter ever so slightly. The door swung open almost immediately upon Ochako's knocking and a mildly surprised Deku stood in its wake. Upon seeing Ochako, Deku's face turned bright red, informing Ochako that no, Deku had not just brushed it aside and thought nothing of it. In fact, it told her that he was as bad as she was and that this was going to be one awkward talk. Despite that, she felt her heart become lighter with relief. You Uraraka-san. What are you doing here? Deku asked quietly, looking almost fearfully to the right and left at the other dorm rooms. Ah! Ochako's tongue twisted into knots and she found herself unable to speak. Her eyes were locked on Deku's mouth, how he licked his lips and bit them gently. She could feel her heart speed up again and she tried again to speak, only for silence to remain between them. Is something wrong, Uraraka-san? Ochako dryly gulped and choked out, can I come in? He seemed taken back by the question, but nodded stiffly and stepped out of the way to allow her and she shuffled into the room, glancing wearily at all the All Might merchandise that still decorated his walls. Deku closed the door as Ochako sat down on his bed. He slowly turned to her and stood there, looking uncomfortable and as if he didn't know what to do next. Before she could stop herself, Ochako pat the bed beside her. It was an innocent enough motion, but it caused Deku to tense up suddenly as if she had insinuated something more than a talk should occur. Deku stiffly walked over to her with his arms straight and his fists clenched. He sat on the opposite end of the bed, his head down and hands in his lap. Ochako didn't know whether to find it cute or worrisome. Deku-kun. Deku's head turned slightly toward her, an indication for her to go on. About what happened. Ah. Deku went pin straight, his head flying up. His face was still red and he seemed to struggle with keeping his eyes on hers, having them flick back between her and the surrounding room. I'm really sorry for that. I dunno what came over me. Why you were just so close and we were alone. And I just sorry. He let his eyes fall to the side of her, at the far corner of his room. Ochako blinked as she processed what he said. I don't. He winced as she hesitated. Blame you for it. I don't really know what I think of it, but I wouldn't know. I don't think that. She cursed herself for fumbling so much, but damn it, he kept biting his god-dang lip. Oh, he said, then added, I don't blame you either. That's good, I guess. Ochako let out a lame laugh. Why yeah. Deku responded with a laugh that was just as lame. Silence. This was turning out just as great as Ochako envisioned it being. Frowning to herself, Ochako looked down at her hands with narrowed eyes. Why was it suddenly so hard to talk to him? She'd never had this problem before, well, besides that one time in the mall, but that was only once and for completely different reasons. Granted, she's never kissed him before, but it was just a spur of the moment kind of thing that happened because they were playing a stupid party game. It shouldn't be affecting her this much. And besides, it wasn't that big of a deal anyway. So what if they kissed? It's not the end of the world, nor is it something to be freaking out about. Such things were perfectly normal. Kissing and kissing with tongues and kissing with biting and wanting hands to wander and wanting mouths to wander and wanting, just wanting so badly. Wait, she cut her thought off. What? Ochako tensed suddenly, earning a surprised noise from Deku. She covered her blushing face with her hands and fought the urge to scream. She found she couldn't and settled with a muffled squeal. Uraraka-san. What's wrong? Ah. Now Deku was worried. What now? And nothing. Nothing. Nothing is wrong, really. Smooth. Ochako waved her hand at him as she turned away and kept one hand on her face. She could feel how hot her face was through her hand and prayed to the gods above that he wouldn't think anything of it. Then why is your face so red? Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Ah, and no reason, she started, still not looking at him. I guess I can't really stop thinking about it. More silence. Ochako gnawed on her bottom lip as she stared at the rightmost corner of his room. This wasn't going how she planned at all, though. She didn't really plan anything. Everything after knocking on his door had been improvised, but sitting in an awkward silence with him wasn't the direction she intended for this to go. Ochako had only wanted for this to be talked about, followed by them smiling at each other and letting it go. Because damn it, if the door of opportunity isn't closed, then Ochako might decide to walk through. And oh, how she considered it. She should just get out what she wants to say. Deku was looking just about as uncomfortable as ever anyway, so getting it over with would be ideal. Yeah, just saying what she came here for and leaving with her friendship with Deku intact was what she should do. Everyone knew high school relationships never worked out anyway. But even so, she coughed a bit. Deku-kun. She got a squeak of acknowledgement. I just wanted to say, that what happened was just an accident. Ochako winced at how she ended the statement like a question, but continued on. It was kinda spur of the moment, and I don't think we should take a mistake like this too seriously, like we should just forget it happened. Wait, no, it wasn't a mistake. Crap, I didn't want to say it like that. A mistake. No, not a mistake. She turned to look back at Deku and found that he was staring down at his lap, his puffy hair falling enough to shield his expression from her. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, to try and take it back, but her heart had been lodged in her throat, rendering her speechless. Deku's head shook slightly, his curls bouncing, and he looked back at her with a closed-eyed smile that looked almost sad. Around his eyes were turning a bit red, a different color than the pink of his cheeks, which told Ochako that that wasn't an embarrassed flush. She wondered what it was. If that's what you want, then yeah, we can just forget it happened. Her eyes were suddenly stinging and her throat ached. She swallowed past the lump in her throat and willed herself to not cry. All right. The door was closing. Well, it was done. Not in the way Ochako had intended, but it was over. It would become an old memory now, something to laugh about later on. She and Deku would continue being friends, and just that. Friends. The word made her frown deepen and her stinging eyes blur. All she had to do now was get up, say goodnight to him, and leave. Yep, that's all she had to do. Just push off of his bed and wave, then leave, go to her room, and actually fall asleep this time. Yeah, easy peasy, just up and leave. Get up and leave. She stayed and waited. Ochako felt torn. She had been since the beginning of this, both wanting to put this incident away in her mind and wanting it to develop into something more. The two of them sat in silence for what felt like hours. It was a tense quiet that made Ochako uncomfortable, but she still couldn't bring herself to move her legs. She was rooted to the spot, waiting, wanting, for something to happen. She didn't stay exactly where she was though. Ochako could feel herself slowly inching closer towards Deku. It was probably a lost cause now that she'd said what she did, but maybe there was a way to fix it. The bed was new, so it didn't creak when she moved, which gave her a false idea that she was being sneaky. It was slow going and she realized when her left thigh met his right one too early that he had been moving towards her too. Her heart jumped at the realization and someone's red shoe stopped the door from shutting. Ochako glanced at where their legs were touching, noting the two different shades they were and the difference in shape. From the corner of her eye, she could see Deku looking as well. She lifted her head a moment later and looked at him as he did the same a second after she did. They stared at each other, and Ochako couldn't get over how green his eyes were. They were rimmed red though, which gave her the heartbreaking and kind of relieving idea that he'd been crying a bit too. From beyond the embarrassed haze of her mind, she listed off the different shades of green she would use to describe his eyes. She didn't know many, so she was mostly just thinking green over and over again, but two that stuck out were emerald and jade. She also noted that his eyes were flecked with the different shades of green. She didn't know the names of it. Was then Ochako realized that, at the same time he was plain looking, Izuku was absolutely beautiful. Her hand clasped the doorknob. I should, she found herself saying softly. Be going. Deku was nodding, but the look in his eye and how he was staring at her mouth told her he didn't really agree. She didn't really agree with what she said either. Her eyes flicked between his eyes and his mouth, wanting to lose herself in the green and also wishing to give him the same message he was sending her. I want to kiss you. His forehead bumped against hers gently, startling her a bit, and his gaze slowly trailed up from her mouth and caught her own. Her breath caught in her throat as he stared her down. There was some sort of determination in Deku's eyes that was mixed in with something that looked kind of like. Now this was just speculation and had a 100% chance of being wrong, but it looked sort of like adoration. If she weren't frozen at the current moment and unable to move, Ochako's sure she would have immediately fled and let both the actual and the metaphorical door slam shut behind her. It's late, she murmured and Deku made a noise of agreement. He didn't move. Very late, he said after a moment, still not moving. She's almost 100% sure she doesn't want him to move at all. Tomorrow morning will be terrible if we don't go to sleep. Yeah, tomorrow. Right, tomorrow. Where everything will be forgotten, or at least pushed away, ignored until it becomes a distant memory that holds no meaning. Who knew a little 5-minute make-out session could mean so much to someone? Hey. Deku's voice stopped Ochako's train of thought as she was reminded of how close they were. So close she could count every single one of his freckles, even the ones that were paler and nearly blended in with his skin. Maybe we shouldn't. Despite the fact that he'd been the one that had gotten so close to her and that he'd also moved halfway across the bed to get right next to her, Ochako felt a sudden fear grip her heart that he was going to say something about how friends shouldn't be getting this close to each other. Forget about what happened. She then promptly and metaphorically kicked herself for thinking that. While beating herself up for causing herself unnecessary worry, she accidentally mumbled a why. Once she realized she said that, Ochako hoped it sounded like she was just curious and not like she didn't agree. It was interesting to see someone's cheeks turn red so close up. It was similar to the way red dye fanned out when a drop is placed in water. See cause. His eyes seemed to be trying to look away from hers, but couldn't because of their proximity. I didn't hate it. Oh, on the contrary. I really, really liked it. And I guess what I'm trying to say I don't want to pretend like it didn't happen. Ochako was suddenly very, very happy. Okay, she started, perking up a bit. He retreated his head back a bit so that his forehead wasn't resting on hers anymore. He was still leaning quite close, which Ochako was both happy and flustered at. That's fine, too. Quieter, she added. I didn't want to forget either. Of course, with how close they were, she had to know he would hear her loud and clear. Deku suddenly had a very, very happy expression on it, kind of looked like he was trying not to show how ecstatic he was, which was utterly adorable. Ochako grinned then giggled. Izuku let his lip curve up finally when she did and asked her why she was laughing, as he went back into his own space. Why, you just looked really happy and it made me even happier than I was. She smiled brightly at him, closing her eyes in glee. When she opened her eyes again, Deku was smiling at her with one of the most sincere smiles she's ever seen. He looked directly at her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Taken aback, she jolted back a bit. What's that look for? Her heart was running again. I guess I just. He let out a small laugh. I guess I realized what we've been implying here, and it just. I've never been this happy, I think. His eyes flicked downward for a moment and with his uneven, scarred hand, he gently grasped her own. His eyes came back up and met hers. Ochako's ribs hurt from where her heart beat against them. Can we? He asked, and it took her another second to see that he was quoting her from a few hours ago. God, she thought, that was only a few hours ago. It feels like years. With an ecstatic, Ochako launched herself forward and kissed the boy like her life depended on it. He rocked back for a moment before catching himself with his arm and laughed against her lips. They were quick to get back into the swing they had had earlier in that broom closet, with Deku leant back and Ochako half in his lap, except this time their kiss wasn't a desperate fight to the death. It was passionate and good and communicated exactly what the other felt. It was what their first kiss should have been. When Ochako finally did leave, the two were breathless, smiling messes. They had probably said goodbye 100 times before Ochako had actually begun her trek back to her dorm room. Giddy and the happiest she'd ever been, Ochako laid down on her bed and immediately fell asleep, with sweet dreams of throwing that door wide open and walking through with her head held high swirling in her mind. Where stories live. Discover now.